A lot of frictions was prior to the tour, especially with Bobby, unfinished or unspoken.
Was it a certain type of relief when he left?
Wasn't at first. It was kind of scary. First
Okay.
feeling is that, man, is this going to be something that puts the stain on the groove?
Right.
New Edition, the Golden Boys of Boston, once made the whole world fall in love with the sweetest tunes of the 1980s. Candy Girl, Cool It Now, Mr. Telephone Man. Hits that seemed to forever seal their image in the hearts of fans, friendship, music, and dazzling fame. Yet behind the laughter and the glittering stages were cracks that had long begun to form. Fiery arguments, cold betrayals, exploitative financial contracts, and the looming shadows of addiction and loneliness. From innocent boys stepping into the spotlight to grown men wrestling with careers and inner demons, the journey of New Edition is a bittersweet ballad no one could have imagined. In today's video, we'll trace their footsteps, pull back the velvet curtain, and confront the untold truths behind New Edition's tragedy and secrets. But before all the tragedy quietly took root, New Edition began with a simple dream, a dream born from Boston streets where music was all they had. Summer 1978. In the dusty, traffic-choked neighborhood of Roxbury, Boston, three poor kids, Bobby Brown, Ricky Bell, and Michael Bivens, would gather outside a laundromat, drawn by the sounds spilling from a battered old radio. They sang, they danced, and they dreamed. It wasn't childish fantasy. It was their only way out of those fading gray streets. When Ralph Tresvant, a boy with a soaring, stage-ready voice, joined them, and later Ronnie DeVoe, nephew of a local band manager, the final pieces clicked into place. They called themselves New Edition, the new generation meant to carry on the legacy of the Jackson 5. October 1982. At the Hollywood Talent Night competition in Boston, the five boys performed The Love You Save before a tiny audience of barely 200 people. In the back row sat Maurice Starr, an ambitious black producer with big dreams but little money. He saw something no one else did, a teen group that could conquer not just the black music market, but maybe even the white one too. Starr signed them on the spot and rushed them into the studio. By February 1983, Candy Girl was released, shooting straight to #1 on the R&B charts and landing on the Billboard Hot 100, catapulting five boys from Boston into overnight superstardom. But with fame arriving too soon, the first trap was already being set. November 1983. After a grueling tour across 15 states, New Edition returned to Boston, hearts full of hope. They were ushered into a tiny meeting room at the management office. Each boy was handed an envelope. Inside, a mere $187, an amount that couldn't even buy the suits they had worn on stage. Every cost, flights, hotels, insurance, wardrobe, had been legally deducted. Bobby Brown slammed the envelope down on the table, tears welling up in his eyes. At just 14 years old, he shouted, "I sang my heart out for over 30 nights, and now I'm getting paid less than a busboy at McDonald's." But the shock didn't end there. By February 1984, they discovered that Maurice Starr had secretly formed a new group, New Kids on the Block, built on the exact same model, but with white boys, targeting a more profitable market. New Edition had been left behind like a discarded experiment. In March 1984, the group hired a lawyer and filed a petition to break free from their contract with Starr. The hearings dragged on for 3 tense weeks in Boston, where the five kids first realized what it felt like to be bought and sold on paper. 3 months later, they signed a new contract with MCA Records through a company called Jump and Shoot. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, more professional, more structured, but also more painful. They were no longer the innocent boys they once were. At the end of 1984, New Edition released their self-titled album with hits like Cool It Now and Mr. Telephone Man, flooding the airwaves across America, earning double platinum status and selling over 2 million copies. But behind the glittering stage lights, something had already begun to crack. Ricky Bell collapsed backstage during a concert in Cleveland in December 1984 from sheer exhaustion. Bobby Brown started reacting violently against management over his lack of control over bonus payments. Group meetings were no longer places of sharing, but instead became battlegrounds of blame, sharp arguments, and growing fatigue. The big dream had begun, but the silent cracks had also started to form, a destiny quietly signaling the long tragedies ahead. The stage lights still blazed, the cheers still erupted each night, but behind the scenes, small cracks were quietly appearing, steadily spreading like fractures across glass. After the blazing success of the New Edition album in 1984, the group believed they had finally entered the ranks of true stars. But in the spring of 1985, when they reviewed their contracts, they uncovered a bitter truth. They had never signed directly with MCA Records. They had only signed with Jump and Shoot, the middle company that held total control over their business and earnings. The dream of financial independence shattered right before their eyes. To completely cut ties with Jump and Shoot, each member was forced to borrow $100,000 from MCA itself, a heavy price paid not only in money but also in the crushing burden of debt that weighed on every step they took afterward. The album All for Love, released at the end of 1985, sold over 1 million copies, a number any group would envy. But compared to their previous double platinum, it was a step backward. Singles like Count Me Out, A Little Bit of Love, and With You All the Way still charted, but they couldn't hide the growing financial pressures on their shoulders. Inevitably, the rebellious fire inside Bobby Brown grew fiercer. Bobby no longer wanted to be boxed into the sweet boy's image. He craved stronger, bolder, more mature music, and he began breaking free. In 1985, during the taping of Soul Train, Bobby abruptly walked off mid-show, leaving his bandmates scrambling awkwardly on stage. At Solid Gold, Bobby casually added provocative dance moves into their performance without warning. At a concert in Atlanta, during a heated argument with Michael Bivins, Bobby threw his microphone directly at his teammate, a blatant act of war without any pretense. Tensions reached a boiling point. MCA management stood at a crossroads between commercial pressure and the group's unity. Either Bobby changed or Bobby had to leave. And so, in February 1986, Bobby Brown officially left New Edition to pursue a solo career. On the day Bobby left, there was no press conference, no farewell hugs. Just cold, averted glances and words left unspoken. Ralph Tresvant later admitted, "We gave Bobby every chance, but he no longer respected that." The group of 5 was now down to 4. But New Edition didn't stop there. That same year, they appeared on the hit TV series Knight Rider, performing Count Me Out, sending a clear message that even without Bobby, they would continue. They recorded Earth Angel for the Karate Kid Part 2 soundtrack, a song that later reached number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100, a significant achievement in a turbulent time. By the end of 1986, they released the album Under the Blue Moon, a collection of classic 1950s doo-wop songs. The album didn't produce a blockbuster, but it kept the group's name alive as the last guardians of a fading genre. Yet what remained in the dim spotlight was not just music. It was the wounds that hadn't yet healed, the empty spaces each tried to hide during the long nights after the curtain fell. A dazzling first chapter had closed, and a new chapter, filled with brutal challenges and more heartbreaking separations, was silently beginning. The light of New Edition in 1987 seemed to be fading. Bobby Brown's departure had left a void that wasn't easy to fill, and inside the group, an undercurrent of unease kept spreading, especially as Ralph Tresvant, their lead vocalist, began hinting that he wanted to leave and pursue a solo career. At that fragile moment, they were forced to make a bold decision, to invite Johnny Gill, a deep, mature voice from Washington, D.C., to join the group. In April 1987, Johnny Gill arrived at their rehearsal in Boston. Unlike New Edition's sweet, boyish image, Johnny was already a seasoned artist with a few solo albums to his name. At first, his presence stirred tension within the group, especially with Ralph, who feared that Johnny's husky voice might replace his place at the center. But instead of breaking apart, they found an unexpected harmony. Ralph decided to stay. For the first time in their history, New Edition became a 6-member group, no longer just sweet-faced boys calling out to teenage fans, but young men shouldering a new dream of maturity. The transformation had begun. They collaborated with the genius producer duo Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, the same masterminds behind Janet Jackson's timeless hits. In a Minneapolis studio, days of recording stretched from early morning to dawn. They no longer just sang, they learned how to ache, how to bleed, how to infuse every lyric with the complex emotions of adulthood. In June 1988, the Heartbreak album was born, and it exploded onto the scene. No more innocent teenage melodies. Instead, they delivered soulful, bittersweet ballads like Can You Stand the Rain, aching confessions like If It Isn't Love, and lonely laments like You're Not My Kind of Girl. Heartbreak immediately became a phenomenon. It sold millions, went double platinum, and produced 5 consecutive singles that stormed the charts. Songs like Crucial and Any Heartbreak weren't just music, they became the voice of an entire generation stepping hesitantly into adulthood. But a real success wasn't just about the charts. At the end of 1988, New Edition launched the biggest tour of their career. They were no longer opening for anyone. They were the main act. Ironically, the opening acts for them were none other than Bobby Brown, now a sensation with his solo album Don't Be Cruel, and Al B. Sure. Each night, thousands packed stadiums shoulder to shoulder. Every step they took on stage, every roar of the crowd, every beam of light shining down on them. Now it wasn't just for the boy idols they once were, but for men who had survived loss, betrayal, and reclaimed their own voices. That pinnacle wasn't a random blessing. It was the price of tears, sleepless nights, and moments when it all nearly fell apart. At this point, New Edition was no longer just a band. They had become a symbol of resilience, of growth, of music that could both melt hearts and make people weep in silence. In 1997, after nearly a decade apart, New Edition announced their reunion. A moment that once seemed impossible. 6 men who once stepped out of the same dream, now coming back together under the name that had made history. The Home Again tour was expected to be a brilliant new chapter, a true rebirth. But even from the first rehearsals, the air was thick with doubt. Old scars, disagreements, egos, comparisons that had never fully healed were merely buried under the bright stage lights. And then, tragedy erupted one night in September 1997 in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Bobby Brown, like a ticking time bomb, dragged out his solo performance far beyond the allowed time limit. When the background music was supposed to stop, Bobby kept on performing passionately, completely ignoring the agreed-upon schedule. Ronnie DeVoe, furious at the blatant disrespect, stormed onto the stage under the blinding lights and the chaotic cheers. He tried to pull Bobby backstage, but Bobby fought back violently. Immediately after, Michael Bivins rushed in. A microphone flew through the air, the cold metallic thud echoing as it hit the stage floor. A chaotic brawl erupted right before the audience could even grasp what was happening. Bodyguards from both sides charged in, grappling furiously. And in the midst of that total chaos, a sudden gunshot shattered the suffocating air of the hall. Luckily, no one was hurt, but that violent scene marked the beginning of an irreversible collapse. The show was canceled immediately. Bobby Brown and Michael Bivins were forced off the tour after just a few performances. The remaining members, DeVoe, Bell, Gill, and Tresvant, struggled to finish the rest of the tour as a 4-man group under the disappointed, doubtful, and sometimes mocking gaze of the audience. After the incident, Bobby Brown admitted that he had been drinking heavily throughout the tour, fueling small conflicts into uncontrollable hatred. The Home Again tour, once expected to rewrite history, ended in bitter, humiliating failure. There were no longer deafening cheers, only harsh criticism in the newspapers, and a string of quietly canceled contracts. New Edition temporarily disbanded. Each member drifted into their own solo projects, carrying within them the deep fractures of a brotherhood that could no longer be fully healed. For those who had grown up with their music, it wasn't just the breakup of a group, it was the end of an era, a part of their memories left forever shattered. The future that once blazed so brightly for New Edition was now nothing more than a faint, fragile smudge on the horizon. The stage lights might have hidden the pain for a fleeting moment, but once the curtain fell, each member of New Edition had to confront the deepest wounds of their own. Tragedies without applause, without glory. Bobby Brown, the wildest child of the group, was also the first to spiral uncontrollably downward. After leaving New Edition, Bobby embarked on a solo career marked by explosive successes, like My Prerogative, a defiant anthem that rocked the Billboard charts. He became one of the brightest R&B stars of the late 1980s. But behind those hits was a soul that was increasingly fractured. Success had come too fast, too big, but Bobby could never escape the gnawing sense of insecurity, of being held back, of constantly needing to prove he deserved it. And so he turned to drugs as a temporary escape, only to quickly turn it into a prison of his own making. For 16 years, Bobby cycled in and out of rehab, a vicious, endless loop. Marijuana, cocaine, heroin, he tried it all, and he fell into it all. In 2011, while on a New Edition tour, Bobby abandoned shows midway out of grief after the death of his ex-wife, Whitney Houston. Just 3 years later, in 2014, he had to leave the tour early again due to complications from an emergency surgery. Bobby Brown, the man who once swaggered, "I do what I want to do," had by now become a frail, exhausted shadow running from himself. But Bobby wasn't the only one who fell into the abyss. Ricky Bell, the group's most powerful yet humble voice, fought an equally brutal, silent battle. In the mid-1990s, Ricky spiraled deeper into dangerous temptations. What started as harmless partying quickly escalated into all-night binges with increasingly dangerous addictions. The most bitter twist, it was his then-girlfriend, Amy Correa, who first introduced him across that fateful line with shimmering pills under the dim lights, opening the door to his downward spiral. From the most disciplined, steady member of the group, Ricky became a lost addict. He sold everything, his house, his cars, even his custom-designed Timberland shoes, all just to get a few more fixes. One night in 1998, Ricky Bell nearly died from an overdose in a tiny, unknown apartment. It was only thanks to Amy's timely discovery and a secret rushed trip to the hospital that his life was saved. No one in New Edition knew. The media stayed silent. The family stayed silent. Ricky saved himself in the darkness as if he had never really been part of the dazzling stage lights at all. It would take many more years before Ricky Bell truly overcame his addiction. In an emotional social media post, he wrote, "I choose to share this painful story to offer hope to anyone suffering in silence, because I was there once, and I'm still here." Personal tragedies were never isolated stories. They were the silent cracks that slowly gnawed away at the foundation of New Edition over the decades. As early as 1985, Bobby Brown had grown dissatisfied with the group's clean-cut image, demanding the freedom to express himself more openly, a dissatisfaction that turned into acts of rebellion, eventually leading to a painful separation. By 1997, during the Home Again tour, unresolved tensions combined with substance abuse issues erupted into a violent brawl, ending with the cold crack of a gunshot in the Las Cruces Arena. The group couldn't escape the crushing financial burden either, the $100,000 debt each member carried from buying their freedom from Jump and Shoot in 1985, coupled with tour revenues being almost entirely drained by expenses, left them living frugally despite the superstar label. Even sadder, for many years, all the pain, the addictions, and the deep emotional wounds were hidden behind hit songs and flawless synchronized dance moves. It wasn't until 2017, when the television series The New Edition story aired, that the world finally learned. Ricky Bell had once nearly died from addiction. Bobby Brown had come close to death several times during withdrawal. And the songs they sang about love and heartbreak, they were never just pretty words. They were the truth, paid for with blood and tears. When the stage lights dimmed and the applause grew thin, another silent war flared up, more bitter and enduring than any argument they had ever faced on New Edition's long road. In 2017, after the New Edition story aired and attracted over 28 million viewers, their name once again blazed brightly in public memory. But just as the glow began to warm them, old cracks quietly started to spread. In a shocking move, Johnny Gill and Ralph Tresvant filed on their own to trademark exclusive rights to the New Edition name, the name tied to decades of tears and sacrifice from every member. No press conference, no announcement letter, just a silent decision. And by the time Ricky Bell, Michael Bivins, Bobby Brown, and Ronnie DeVoe found out, it felt like a quiet knife twisting into the fragile trust that remained. They felt betrayed on the very soil they had shed blood, sweat, and youth to build. A feeling that had no name, only the silent suffocation each time they saw the New Edition logo and knew they no longer had a right to it. From there, division became inevitable. Johnny and Ralph embarked on their own path, recording and performing as a fragmented version. Bell, Bivins, Brown, and DeVoe formed RBRM, an effort to salvage a little warmth from their old name. But no matter how many name changes, lineup changes, or how many old hits they sang, the painful truth remained. None of them, not Johnny and Ralph, not RBRM, could recreate the magic of the original New Edition. Quiet shows for sparse audiences. New projects that faded into silence. Fans weren't looking for fragments. They longed to see the whole picture, complete as it once was. And ultimately, it was that longing that pulled these scarred men back together. After years of silence, negotiation, and tense backstage conversations, in 2023, a final agreement was signed. All members agreed to share the New Edition brand equally. No one stood alone anymore. No one owned the dream that had been built together since their school uniform days. This reunion wasn't just about music. It was about pride, about the youth they had crossed broken roads together to survive, and about paying a debt to the millions of hearts that had never stopped loving that name. New Edition, after more than 40 years, after dozens of breakups and fragile reconciliations, had finally returned to being themselves. A new chapter, fragile yet radiant, had begun. After all the breakups and heartbreaks, the name New Edition refused to die. Like a scar that never fully healed, this group, somehow, always found its way back, even when no one knew whether they were whole enough to stand together again. But they did. For the first time in nearly a decade, in 2006, Bobby Brown unexpectedly reunited with the rest of the group at the BET 25th anniversary event. The stage lights flashed on, the familiar music played, and once again, 6 silhouettes stood side by side, as if the years of anger had never existed. A concert filmed in South Carolina captured that magical moment where past and present crossed paths in the tearful eyes of their fans. 2 years later, they collaborated with New Kids on the Block, the white boy band originally created as their commercial clone. On the track Full Service, a belated handshake between 2 generations swept up by the harsh music machine. That same year, Bobby, Ralph, and Johnny formed the group Heads of State, an effort to reclaim their individual identities amid a rapidly shifting music market. They performed for 3 years, though no one dared call it New Edition. Without the full group, it was only a sketch. In 2011, they gave a grand performance at the Essence Music Festival. The group embraced on stage, but backstage, Bobby Brown suddenly quit the tour without any notice. It was later revealed that Whitney Houston, the ex-wife who had driven him to madness and despair, had just passed away. Bobby lost all sense of direction. It wasn't just a personal loss, it was a blow that crushed a man who had already been teetering on the edge. 3 years later, in 2014, history repeated itself. Bobby quit mid-tour again, this time because of an emergency surgery. In a handwritten letter to fans, he wrote, "I have nothing left to prove. I just ask for forgiveness." It was one of the saddest apologies anyone had ever read. Just when it seemed all doors had closed, in 2021, they shocked everyone by signing a performance contract with Creative Artists Agency, one of America's top agencies. That same year, they returned to the stage at the American Music Awards, no longer as an opening act, but as the centerpiece. Standing alongside New Kids on the Block, they sang as if they had never aged, as if scandals, separations, and tears had never existed. The arena exploded. Fans rose to their feet and cried. A generation thought lost, reignited once more in the endless ovation. In 2022, they launched the Culture Tour, spanning 30 cities alongside Keith Sweat, Tank, and Guy. No longer teenage boys racing across the stage, they moved slower, steadier, singing with the weight of nearly half a century of scars engraved deep in their souls. Not stopping there, in 2023, they embarked on the Legacy Tour, a name that seemed like destiny, covering 31 major cities and announcing a Las Vegas residency for February 2024. From poor boys singing for spare change on Boston streets, they now stood at the very heart of America's City of Lights, a place reserved only for true legends. Their achievements didn't need to be measured in awards, although they had won American Music Awards, Soul Train Awards, and the Soul Train Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2017, they were honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, right on the boulevard where, once upon a time, they had only dared to stand outside the theaters gazing in. In 2022, they were enshrined on the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame, and by 2023, they officially entered the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame, a place reserved for the legends of black music. But beyond all the plaques, trophies, and symbols of fame, what New Edition truly left behind was an immeasurable legacy. They became a living inspiration for Boys II. Men, Jodeci, NSYNC, Jagged Edge, and an entire generation of artists who followed. They proved that those who had been shattered the most, if brave enough to look each other in the eye, could be reborn. The television series The New Edition Story, 2017, traced the journey from a dusty corner of Roxbury to the grandest stages in America. But it was the members themselves, with blood, tears, and forgiveness, who wrote the most beautiful ending. That none of us are perfect, but we can still come home, if we have enough faith. And perhaps the greatest thing New Edition ever did wasn't making millions fall in love with their music, but making millions believe that even after all the mistakes, we can still start over, together. Looking back at nearly half a century of New Edition's journey, one sees a path paved with dazzling glories and hidden wounds. They reached the summit of success with million-selling albums, tours spanning dozens of cities, and nights that set America ablaze with cheers. But behind the stage lights, the price was personal tragedies no one could have imagined. Bobby Brown's bitter downfall, Ricky Bell's silent battle with addiction, the heartbreaking brawls during the Home Again tour in 1997, and the trademark disputes that almost shattered their brotherhood. There were moments when it seemed the name New Edition would forever be just beautiful, broken memories. Yet at the moment when all roads seemed closed in 2023, they did the unimaginable. They signed an equal ownership agreement for the New Edition brand, a small act, but the greatest victory of their lives. A sign that even after countless ups and downs, hearts that once beat together can still find their way back. New Edition's journey reminds us, fame, fortune, or a star on the boulevard cannot erase the silent wounds we carry. And no matter how brilliant the dream of music, it always comes with the harsh price of loneliness, loss, and sacrifice. Yet through patience, through silent tears, they proved that sincere music and true brotherhood, if strong enough, could weather any storm. The greatest legacy New Edition leaves behind isn't just sweet love songs or flawless dance moves. It's a lesson in resilience, in friendship, and in the ability to forgive, even when the wounds have sunk deep into the heart. And you? What secret about New Edition touched you the most during this tearful journey? And in your opinion, what helped them overcome every tragedy to stand on the same stage again? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to discover the most touching stories in music history together. And in your opinion, what helped them overcome every tragedy to stand on the same stage again? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to discover the most touching stories in music history together.